How many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human? Is arsenic detectable in autopsy? Top 5 undetectable poisons that show no signs of foul play. These are some of the haunting queries found in the Google search history of a dentist who allegedly murdered his wife in Aurora, Colorado that date back to February 27, 2023. Love, they say, has the power to transform and reveal the best in people and the dark side as well. For 45-year-old dentist James Craig, the dark side seemed to eclipse his 22-year marriage, ultimately leading to the poisoning of his lifelong partner, 43-year-old Angela Craig. This is the grim story of Angela and James Craig. James and Angela Craig, the couple who radiated perfection in the eyes of the public, appeared to have an impeccable marriage and a flawless family. Their story was a beacon of admiration for all. Their social media posts and James Craig's eloquent press release painted a vivid picture of his joyous matrimony to Angela, his partner in life, accompanied by their 6 children, and together they all reveled in the thrill of outdoor adventures, from camping and fishing to exhilarating snowboarding escapades, among others. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly flawless union, and as is often the case in any marriage, lay hidden complexities that bore its share of internal struggles. James, a compulsive gambler, worsened his financial woes with each ill-fated bet. Every attempt to turn his luck around only sent him spiraling deeper into the abyss of losses and debt. His fortune had also dwindled significantly, drained by dubious business ventures and ill-fated forays into the world of cryptocurrency, leaving him drowning in insurmountable debt. In a desperate bid for a quick fix, he had ventured to Las Vegas only to squander $2,000 in a futile attempt to reverse his fortunes. In a shocking revelation to her sister Toni, Angela disclosed that her husband James had driven his dental practice to the brink of ruin, forcing Angela to at times step in and help run the dental practice when James couldn't afford to hire additional staff. Their marriage was marred by James's infidelity with multiple women, and despite numerous attempts to break free, Angela found herself ensnared by his persuasive charm. The darkest chapter unfolded when James drugged Angela 5 or 6 years ago, confessing it was to prevent her from thwarting his attempt to take his own life. This harrowing incident would later play a pivotal role in the unfolding investigation, as evidenced by a series of revealing text messages presented later on in the video. Angela's recent visit to her sister in Utah from March 1st to March 5th painted a starkly different picture. She returned home after visiting her sister in Utah from March 1st to March 5th, radiating good health and positivity, a testament to her regular fitness regimen with not a single complaint to be heard. On March 6th, Angela's husband prepared her usual protein shake before their daily workout, a routine they both followed without issue. Little did she know that while she was away visiting her sister, James had been scouring the internet for lethal poisons, receiving a delivery of arsenic on March 4th. He clandestinely blended this deadly concoction into her protein shake, and as she sipped it, an unsettling dizziness and weakness overcame her. Angela sought help at Parker Adventist Hospital, where she was discharged the same day. Unaware of the dark truth, her family dismissed her condition as yet another bout of routine sinus infections, not realizing the sinister reality unfolding. On March 9th, she was readmitted to the hospital, her symptoms worsening, and the doctors remained baffled. Throughout this ordeal, James maintained contact with their close friends, Ryan and Michelle Redfern, who had no inkling of the dark secrets lurking beneath the surface. Ryan, not just a friend but a trusted business partner, had even lent a helping hand during James's financial struggles in a bid to salvage their dental practice. Michelle, drawing on her nursing background, frequently inquired about Angela's diagnosis, eager to unravel the mystery behind her illness and identify any potential oversights by the medical professionals. Initially, He brushed Michelle off, insisting that they had more than enough support. However, Michelle's persistence in checking on her friend led her to keep a close watch on Angela's progress through texts. He played the part of a concerned husband, sending updates when prompted, albeit with questionable messages and untimely jokes. Simultaneously, he engaged in text exchanges with his wife in the hospital, offering love while still maintaining an inappropriate sense of humor. Meanwhile, he led a double life, spending time with his secret lover, Karen Kane, a married orthodontist from Marble Falls in Texas. He had arranged for Karen to fly to Colorado from March 8th to March 10th, coinciding with the period his wife was hospitalized, all part of a sinister plan taking shape. This sinister plot was not a one-time occurrence. The orthodontist was scheduled to visit James for a second time from March 16th to 20, a flight ticket already purchased on March 4th. It appeared that this newfound love was the driving force behind James's desire to eliminate his wife from the equation. However, the lover seemed unaware of James's dark deeds despite knowing Angela was unwell and in the hospital. James, instead of displaying genuine concern and support for his ailing wife, sent ill-timed messages filled with desires rather than empathy. Angela, determined to recover, brushed off his advances, focusing on her health. Angela's ordeal took a darker turn when she was released on March 14th, only to be readmitted on March 15th, this time at University Hospital in Colorado, where she was taken by her brother Mark Prey, deepening the mysteries surrounding her illness. James informed the couple about Angela's deteriorating condition, prompting them to rush to the hospital separately from their different locations. In the midst of this, Ryan received a revealing call from the dental practice, uncovering the startling truth lurking behind closed doors. The information uncovered the origin of the sudden mysterious illness that had befallen Angela, who had also already started suspecting foul play. Confronted by Angela's accusations, James responded, "Given our history, I know that must be triggering. Just for the record, I didn't drug you." Back at the dental practice as well, Caitlin, the office manager, recalled a personal package that James had instructed her not to open. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. The discovery unfolded in an unexpected way. Another employee unintentionally unsealed the package that was supposed to remain untouched. It was only a matter of time before Caitlin stumbled upon it, completely forgetting it was James's personal parcel, and peeked inside. She saw inside a biohazard labeled canister with the ominous words, "Potassium cyanide." On realizing the package was James's, she sealed and returned it to James, who seemed completely unaware of her actions. A Google search brought chilling revelations. Angela's symptoms perfectly aligned with the effects of potassium cyanide ingestion, including vomiting, low blood pressure, and nausea. Suspicion grew like a dark cloud, pointing squarely at James as the prime suspect in a sinister poisoning plot. Caitlin had also perhaps recalled their earlier conversations and pieced together a crucial detail. James told her that he had prepared a protein shake for Angela on the very day her illness began. This revelation deepened the web of suspicion surrounding him. Adding to the intrigue were James's peculiar behaviors, staying late at work on non-working days when no patients were scheduled and sneaking into exam room 9 at the end of the hallway and using a different computer while in the dark than the one in his personal office. The web of deceit was tightening around James, leaving Caitlin increasingly alarmed. At the time, Caitlin didn't dwell on it. James had also confided in her about Angela's accusations of poisoning, a revelation that left her deeply troubled. Sharing her concerns with her colleague Jacqueline set the wheels in motion. Jacqueline calls and promptly informs Ryan about the unsettling information. Ryan, deeply concerned, alerted a nurse about the suspicion that Angela might have been poisoned by her own husband using potassium cyanide. Following protocol, the nurse contacted the police, initiating a critical investigation. Tragically, by this point, Angela had been declared brain dead, and James received the devastating news that she would be taken off life support. It was at this juncture that Ryan and Michelle, now in the same car, began discussing the unfolding drama. The sinister plot had reached a critical juncture, and the truth was beginning to surface. In a tense and chilling moment, James made a call to Ryan, and with the phone being connected to the car's Bluetooth speaker, it ensured that they both heard every word. James confronted Ryan, aware that disturbing information had originated from him. Ryan admitted to knowing about the secret package. James attempted to spin a tangled web of excuses, claiming the package held an engagement ring meant to surprise Angela. But Ryan saw through the deception, declaring he knew it contained potassium cyanide and demanding an explanation. Finally, James confessed that it was indeed potassium cyanide, but he concocted a disturbing tale. He alleged that Angela had asked him to obtain it, as she'd been grappling with suicidal thoughts ever since he'd requested a divorce in December 2022. He ordered the poison for her, believing it was a dangerous game of brinksmanship, describing the situation as a game of chicken, not realizing she'd actually consume it. Ryan urged James to stop talking and instead get himself a lawyer, but the die was cast. The Major Crimes Homicide Unit had already launched their investigation. The detective reached out to Child Protective Services caseworker Sydney Romero, who was deeply concerned about James's statements regarding Angela's supposed suicidal tendencies. Sydney found James's claims to be highly suspect as they conflicted with reality. He alleged that Angela had deliberately overdosed on opioids multiple times and claimed he had single-handedly revived her without reporting these incidents or seeking professional help. What made this even more dubious was that none of their children had any knowledge of these supposed events despite living under the same roof. Sydney had already previously met with James and the kids, giving her a clear perspective on the family dynamics. The absence of any mention of these incidents raised serious questions about who was weaving a web of deceit and deception. The truth was unraveling and the stakes were escalating. James, realizing he was sinking into a perilous abyss, desperately sought an ally in his dark hour. On the morning of March 16th, he dispatched a series of texts to Ryan, some of which contained the following words. James's desperation to manipulate his friend was palpable, but fortunately his ploy yielded no results. In his text, he even tried to place blame on his friend for the predicament of his kids who were unable to return to the comfort of their home as they had found the police awaiting them at the doorstep. The police, armed with a search warrant, demanded James's phone, Angela's phone, his wallet, and his laptop. He reluctantly handed them over, along with the passcodes. He informed them that his laptop was at the dental office. The police also photographed his credit cards, ID, and driver's license before returning them. Their search continued at James's residence, where they seized various items believed to be relevant to the case. These included assorted protein powders, workout-style shakers, a computer tablet, 2 unmarked bags containing white powdery substances, and a water bottle discovered on the exercise bike in the main bedroom area. Notably, they failed to locate a hard drive that might have contained surveillance data from security cameras. The detectives then proceeded to James's workplace, where they secured his laptop and its password. Inside a small hand vacuum, they discovered a mysterious white substance, a portion of which was carefully collected and taken as evidence. They also retrieved a hard drive from the exam room 9 that James had used suspiciously. Delving deeper into the investigation, they accessed Angela's phone text messages, confirming her conversations with James. His contact was saved as the boy, with a picture of them, and the number matched the one provided by Ryan and Michelle. The most chilling discovery occurred when they connected the hard drive to a television, revealing James's alarming Google search history. It included the creation of a new email account to conduct searches such as how many grams of pure arsenic will kill a human, which led to a website detailing lethal doses. They also found a search related to whether arsenic is detectable in an autopsy, originating from the Carlson Company. In James's YouTube search history, a series of unsettling titles emerged, including Top 5 Undetectable Poisons That Show No Signs of Foul Play, How to Make Poison, and Top 10 Deadliest Plants (They Can Kill You). The investigation had taken a dark and disturbing turn, unveiling a web of sinister research and unsettling intentions. Further chilling revelations emerged as the investigation deepened. James's searches included oleandrin, along with inquiries on how to create poison from oleander, and even a Google search on acquiring oleander. Disturbingly, he had purchased $330 worth of this deadly plant, but law enforcement had intervened, seizing the package during its delivery. As detectives combed through his emails, they uncovered correspondence with Cassie Rodriguez, an employee of Midland Scientific. This was the same company from which he had procured the potassium cyanide. James had persistently inquired about his delayed order, citing medical use, and provided credentials, which the company had eventually approved. His impatience was palpable as he desperately sought the dangerous substance to expedite his sinister plan. The investigation uncovered that James had been poisoning Angela even during her hospital stay, all while pretending to care for her. In a shocking twist, an email from his mistress lover hinted that he had shared a foreboding secret about Angela's condition. She consoled James, believing Angela was succumbing to natural causes. She expressed profound sympathy, wishing she could help him instead of pulling him away. She acknowledged the immense difficulty he must be facing and offered her presence. However, she drew the line at pretending to be just a friend when there was clearly something more between them. Tragically, on March 18, 2023, Angela passed away, leaving behind their 6 children. Suspicion deepened as James refused an autopsy, a move that only intensified the cloud of guilt hanging over him. If he were truly innocent and genuinely concerned, one would expect a desire to uncover the mysterious cause of his wife's death. The next morning, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder in the tragic case of Angela Craig. The shocking climax to this dark tale was now in full view. On March 23, 2023, James made a solemn entrance into the courtroom. He appeared with his head lowered, hands in cuffs and ankles restrained, clad in the unmistakable orange jumpsuit of the Arapahoe County Detention Center. His gaze avoided the eyes of family and friends present, and he entered a plea of not guilty. As of October 2023, James Craig appeared in Arapahoe County Court and again pleaded not guilty, with his trial being set for April 19, 2024. The jury trial will run across 3 weeks in the spring of 2024. Angela's obituary celebrated her as a devoted, committed, and loving individual, showing unwavering loyalty to her children, family, and friends. Remarkably, she remained loyal even to the man who had betrayed their love and ultimately led to her tragic end. If you found the video compelling, drop a like and subscribe to the channel and leave your thoughts in the comment. For those who knew her only on the surface, 45-year-old Lauren Stewart appeared to lead a life of perfection. A dedicated wife to Dan, a loving mother to her adult children, Stephen and Bethany, it seemed as though fate had truly smiled upon her. Weeks before her unthinkable act, she delved into a dark world, exploring haunting paths on YouTube, delving into methods of ending her own life, and mastering the use of a Glock handgun. This is the enigmatic tale of Lauren Stewart. Lauren Devine Stewart was born on January 9, 1973. She spent most of her life in Michigan, and her work history included part-time personal training at YMCA in Farmington Hills and occasional house cleaning. After leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, she had pursued modeling and acting, exploring her creative side through workshops and networking with photographers. She was regarded as a charming and very pleasant woman. According to one of her profiles on the internet, she wrote, "I love acting and modeling. I'm a very passionate person and it reflects my work. I'm adventurous in nature, and so I like a wide variety of acting and modeling experiences. I enjoy learning new things, especially with good direction. Sharing relative ideas, new and old, intrigues me. Life is an adventure, and my goal is to die knowing I did the things I wanted to do." Lauren was married to a man named Daniel Stewart. Dan worked at the University of Michigan. At the forefront of technological innovation, he served as a lead software architect, dedicated to developing technology for predicting heart attacks. He worked in the technology industry for many years as a coder developer. Together with his wife, they remained devout Christians within the Jehovah's Witness denomination for an extended period, until 2013 when they decided to explore and take a different approach to their spiritual life. The couple had two accomplished children, 27-year-old Stephen and 24-year-old Bethany. A data solution architect and a computer whiz, Stephen, like his father, shared a passion for technology, while Bethany showcased her talents in art and graphic design. At 45, Lauren Stewart had it all: a flourishing husband, two college-educated children, a budding modeling career, and a charming Kego Harbor home adorned with a welcoming heart wreath on the door. But behind this facade of perfection lurked a hidden pain. Lauren grappled with the heartache of exclusion and rejection from the religion she and Daniel were born into. Just a few years back, Lauren and her husband chose to break away from the Jehovah's Witness faith, a Christian denomination notorious for its strict indoctrination and the practice of shunning former members. The idyllic exterior masked a complex web of emotions and choices that would soon unravel into a gripping narrative. You see, up until 2013, Lauren and her family had been devout Jehovah's Witnesses, strictly adhering to beliefs that shunned celebrations like birthdays, Easter, Christmas, or any other event they believed went against the teachings of Christ. In addition, their faith strongly discouraged higher education, putting Stephen and Bethany at risk of being excommunicated if they pursued college in the future. Dan, however, envisioned a brighter future for their children through higher education. When they sought approval from the church elders to let their kids pursue degrees, the response was resolute: disobey the church's policies and face disfellowship. This threat weighed heavily on the Stewarts, as almost everyone they knew, including their extended family, were part of the congregation, and according to the church's rules, excommunication would mean complete isolation, even from their own flesh and blood. After careful consideration, the Stewarts made a bold decision to leave the religion they had long embraced. Although it initially felt right, the community's disapproval became unbearable, especially for Lauren. She described how simple tasks like grocery shopping were marred by dirty looks and hurtful comments from once-believed friends. Even though the belittling remarks were not spoken directly to her, they were intentionally made within earshot. Residing in a small community of just 3,300 residents, many of whom were Jehovah's Witnesses, the Stewarts grappled with the reality that the members in good terms with the church would consistently remind them of their outcast status whenever the opportunity presented itself. This emotional burden took its toll, leading to a breaking point. In search of a lifeline, Lauren turned to the gym, making it a regular part of her life to rebuild her physical well-being. Her transformation was so remarkable that she secured a job as a fitness instructor, leveraging her natural beauty to become a model with surprising success. To those who crossed her path during this time, Lauren appeared pleasant, exuding optimism despite her church's rejection. Yet beneath her facade of confidence lay a profound and unimaginable suffering. Chronic depression, an affliction she battled even before the shelling, intensified with each passing day. Desperately masking her inner turmoil, she would occasionally reveal cracks in her facade, quickly concealing them with a fake smile. One of Lauren's most guarded secrets was the family's crippling debt, pushing them to the edge of ruin. Faced with a dual onslaught of financial and emotional distress, she devised a plan to resolve all her problems at once. Haunted by her inner demons, Lauren Stewart's descent into darkness was both chilling and heartbreaking. She delved into grim research, scouring YouTube for methods of ending her own life and instructional videos on handling a handgun, all leading up to a fateful day. On February 15, 2018, she left a poignant note on the dinner table, meticulously tidied the home, and texted her loved ones as well as her husband's boss. Just before the unthinkable act, she turned over all the family photos on a secretary desk. At 9:24 a.m., she sent a message to her husband's boss that said, "Mark, this is Lauren. Dan had an accident this morning and died. I can't talk now. Someone will inform you later on the details at hospital." The boss reached out for further details but got no response. Hours later, at 5:07 p.m. on the same day, she reached out to her cousin confessing she had become evil and said the following words: "I took my husband and kids with me so that they don't have to feel my selfish act. They will sleep until Christ resurrects them. I truly hope you do better where I failed." To which her cousin responded, "Lauren, you are scaring me. What are you saying? Don't do it, Lauren." Lauren had become more and more detached from reality in recent months. Unbeknownst to her family, she had a pistol in her possession and had tragically decided to turn it against the very people she professed to love, one by one. This heartbreaking culmination of her internal torment resulted in a devastating series of acts. Her first victim was her husband, 47-year-old Dan, who unsuspectingly relaxed in their furnished basement. Lauren, armed and determined, used a throw pillow as a makeshift silencer and shot him in the head as he attempted to flee. With her most significant threat eliminated, she ascended the stairs. Upstairs, her 24-year-old daughter, Bethany, who had recently celebrated her birthday, lay asleep in her room. Without hesitation, Lauren positioned herself just feet from the bed, aimed the gun, and ended her daughter's life in an instant. Next, her son Stephen, who had his own place across town, unknowingly arrived at the family home, lured by false pretenses. Oblivious to the imminent danger, he busied himself with the task his mother had prepared. With his back turned, unaware of what was coming, Lauren, the mother he loved, shot him at point-blank range. The horrifying scene didn't end there. Lauren took the life of the family dog, placing its body in the bathtub. A neighbor had heard these shots, but assumed someone was slamming doors. As the house became a chilling temporary morgue, she meticulously tidied up. The darkness culminated as Lauren turned the gun on herself, using a method she had researched online. The cousin who Lauren had texted tried texting her back, but Lauren never responded. The cousin went over to her house the following morning on February 16th with a friend. With no response at the door, they contacted the police for a welfare check. When police arrived at the house the morning of February 16th, the kitchen was organized. The refrigerator was stocked. Handwritten labels were on various items, and a calendar hung on the refrigerator. Their discovery began with the family dog in the bathtub, triggering a chilling response from the officers who feared there was an active shooter. "Get your gun out! There's a dead dog in the tub!" one had yelled to a partner. Climbing a spiral staircase to the second floor, they found Stephen Stewart on the floor, believed to have been shot while seated on a chair. In another room, Bethany lay lifeless, shot in her sleep with a pillow muffling the sound. Gunshots were also noticeable on the pillowcase. Dan Stewart was discovered on the basement floor in front of a couch, his right hand still in his jeans pocket. The slightly pulled white pocket liner on his left pocket suggested he was standing when he was shot and attempted to react, thus pulling the pocket liner. Upstairs, Lauren was discovered at the base of the stairs, a pistol by her side. her self-inflicted wound between the eyes echoing her online research. 2 notes were found on the dinner table. One was for the medical examiner, while the other, a chilling suicide note, exposed Lauren's inner turmoil. I allowed evil into my heart when I chose not to accept God's free love, and it made me sick inside, Lauren wrote. I killed my family because I know my death would stumble them. At least now they will not suffer and will be resurrected to life forever in peace. As the police delved into the Stewarts' world, a complex and perplexing picture began to emerge. Interviews with family members, friends, and neighbors painted the couple as reclusive, marked by a sense of estrangement after leaving the Jehovah's Witness church. Lauren's history was marred by her own struggles. Some family members said Lauren, who had 11 siblings, suffered from depression, which was later on compounded by the weight of motherhood. In recent years, she spiraled into religious fixation, often launching impassioned tirades. Her family members, including her father and sister, revealed the extent of the emotional distance that had grown over time and had not spoken to her in years. Her mother had passed away when she was 13 years. Estranged for years, they saw Dan as the catalyst pulling Lauren away from them and never really cared about him. They also shared troubling insights about the couple's mental health, characterizing their relationship as a fusion of mutual distress. To those who knew Lauren, her defiance of the Jehovah's Witness faith marked her as an apostasy, a label that spoke to her outspoken opposition to the organization and her decision to leave it. The heart-wrenching tragedy left a deep scar on the lives of those who knew the family intimately. Joyce Taylor, a longtime family friend, was visibly shaken, believing that the murders were a direct consequence of the Stewarts' rejection by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Taylor and other former members shed light on the harsh reality of leaving the faith. They explained that once you depart from the church, even your own family members who remain within its fold are forbidden from interacting with you, a severe form of shunning that takes a heavy emotional toll. According to Taylor, Lauren and Daniel's desire to provide their children with a college education clashed head-on with the religion's teachings, which frowned upon such pursuits. The collision between their aspirations and the rigid doctrines of their faith set the stage for a tragic unraveling. They were shunned everywhere and every way possible. If Lauren went to the grocery store, they didn't look her in the eye, Taylor said. When you're raised a Jehovah's Witness, they choose your friends. They choose who you associate with, and if you go against that, they will disfellowship you or shun you. In a shocking turn of events, Joyce Taylor stormed into a Kingdom Hall meeting in Union Lake, seizing the moment to confront the congregation. Standing on a chair, she boldly criticized the gathering, her voice resonating with a mix of anger and sorrow. "Excuse me, everyone," she declared. "My name is Joyce Taylor. 2 days ago, 4 people died as a result of your shunning process." Taylor's outburst sent shockwaves through the room as she pushed away congregants and vented her pent-up frustration, shouting, "5 years ago, you people pulled your support from this small family. The only support they had was you people. You turned them away and you shunned them. And for what?" she exclaimed. "Because they wanted to raise their children as they saw fit." The police were aware of the family's issues with their former church, but declined to comment. Police records detailed how Lauren had recorded a poignant 2-minute video on February 6th at 11 p.m., explaining the depth of her despair. She cited a multitude of issues, expressing her inability to carry on and her desire not to burden others any longer. Abandoned by her church family, Lauren found herself drowning in a relentless sea of despair, with what she believed to be the only escape: death. Convinced that ending her own life was the solution to her unbearable suffering, she made the agonizing choice to also take the lives of her loved ones, sparing them what she perceived as the inevitable shame and suffering that her actions would bring upon their household. Police records painted a grim picture of Lauren's mental state in the lead-up to the tragedy, noting her unmistakable signs of severe depression and increasingly abnormal behavior. It appeared that she had immersed herself in a personal interpretation of religion, intensifying her depression. Shockingly, she never sought professional help or counseling, and no prescription drugs or alcohol were found in her system. However, traces of marijuana were discovered, not just in Lauren's system, but also in her husband and sons. The police investigation unraveled a complex web of factors contributing to her devastating actions. Loneliness, the severed ties with family and friends over religious differences, and deep-seated emotional scars stemming from alleged childhood sexual abuse all converged to amplify her anguish, ultimately driving her to commit the unthinkable. In a striking testament to the estrangement within the family, Lauren's sister's response spoke volumes. She exhibited a somber demeanor and expressed a surprising lack of surprise when hearing the news of her sister's actions, demonstrating just how far Lauren had drifted from her own sister, who even showed little regret about the tragedy. While the motives behind Lauren Stewart's horrifying actions may have been due to the profound isolation imposed by her former church and her childhood trauma, it begs the question: could things have taken a different turn had she reached out for help when she felt suffocated by her circumstances? Tragically, rather than seeking counseling or professional guidance, Lauren chose a path of self-destruction with devastating consequences for all involved. As we reflect on this heart-wrenching tale, our thoughts are with the victims whose lives were tragically cut short and the loved ones they left behind. On the Sunday afternoon of January 1st, 2006, a man and his daughter arrived at his friend's family house for a New Year's get-together party. He finds the door open, which was a usual thing the hosts did during their parties. Upon entering, he encountered a thick cloud of smoke, prompting him to alert others, and they contacted the authorities. Firefighters swiftly arrived, extinguished the fire, but tragically discovered the lifeless bodies of the party hosts, the Harvey family. What initially seemed like a fire-related incident turned into a chilling revelation. The Harveys had not succumbed to the flames, but rather fell victim to something far more sinister, and it was now a murder investigation. This left the investigators not only emotionally shaken, but also bewildered at the grim turn of events. What really happened here, and who had murdered them? This is the heartbreaking case of the Harvey family. 49-year-old Brian Tabor Harvey, a local icon, gained recognition in the 1980s as the singer-songwriter for the underground indie band House of Freaks. Despite parting ways professionally with his musical partner Johnny Hott in the 90s, they remained close friends. Brian, a devoted musician, took the stage for the last time at a New Year's Eve show that was sadly and unbeknownst to him the final night of his life. On the other hand, 39-year-old Catherine Elizabeth Grabinski achieved success as the co-owner of the popular toy store World of Mirth, located in Richmond's Carytown district. A community pillar, she was an artist involved in various endeavors, from painting sets for community theater to working as a pastry chef and waitress. Catherine had an older sister, Shelley Grabinski, and was also the half-sister of actor Stephen Culp, known for his roles in The West Wing and Desperate Housewives, among other films. The paths of Brian and Catherine would eventually cross at the Border Cafe on Main Street, where Catherine worked, and Brian frequently visited with Johnny. In 1990, they tied the knot, and the House of Freaks released an album featuring a song dedicated to Catherine titled I Got Happy. The couple welcomed 2 daughters into their lives. Stella Ann, their first daughter, was born in 1996. Reflecting on fatherhood, Brian expressed on a fan website, "I think I've come pretty close to knowing why I'm here on Earth since my daughter was born. I think you have to be hopeful about life when you have a child. You owe it to them." Their second daughter, Ruby May, was born in 2001. While Brian continued his musical pursuits, he also took on a job working on computers for the Henrico County school system. Kathy, on the other hand, embarked on the entrepreneurial path by opening World of Mirth, a unique toy and gift store that became a cornerstone in the fashionable Carytown neighborhood. Her brother, Stephen Culp, explained in court, "She wanted to create a space where parents could come with their kids and spend time, and kids could play with the toys. There's no guns or swords or anything like that there. It's a wonderful place." The Harveys established their home in a stately old neighborhood on the south side of Richmond. that had large trees, porch swings, and ivy-covered surroundings. They had a family room in the basement of their 2-story red brick house. The beautiful family were well known and beloved in the community of Richmond, and no one really had bad intentions towards them, or so everyone thought. On New Year's Day, Sunday 2006, Brian, his wife Catherine, and their 2 daughters, 9-year-old Stella and 4-year-old Ruby, anticipated a bustling day ahead. Their plans included hosting a lunchtime barbecue for friends and family, prompting them to rise early and make preparations for the upcoming festivities. It had become a tradition for them to throw a party every New Year's Day, gathering their extensive circle of friends for the occasion. On that particular Sunday morning, Brian ventured outside their residence in the fashionable Woodland Heights area of Richmond, Virginia, to retrieve the newspaper. Absorbed in the front-page news, he returned indoors without locking the door. But since they lived in a relatively safe neighborhood, this wouldn't normally have been a cause for concern. Typically, they also didn't secure the door on party days, leaving it open for arriving friends. However, on this fateful day, unbeknownst to Brian, opportunistic criminals were clandestinely lurking nearby. Catherine busily prepared cookies in the kitchen for the anticipated guests who were due to arrive shortly. Suddenly, she heard voices emanating from the living room, assuming someone had arrived earlier than expected. To her dismay, upon approaching, she was confronted not by familiar faces, but by 2 unknown men. In the tense moments that ensued, Brian, Catherine, and young Ruby were directed downstairs to the basement playroom. Stella, who had spent the previous night at a slumber party, had yet to join them. Once the family was confined to the small space, the intruders used electrical cords and packing tape to bind them, assuring that cooperation would prevent any harm towards them. As they proceeded to ransack the house, a knock on the front door interrupted them, occurring around 10 a.m. The apparent leader of the group released Catherine from her restraints and instructed her to deal with whoever was at the door. However, before permitting her to leave, he issued a stern warning. If she sought help or attempted to escape, her daughter and husband would be murdered. As Stella's arrival was imminent, a distressed Catherine found herself caught in a difficult dilemma. Answering the door would expose her daughter to the same peril as the rest of the family, while ignoring the persistent knocking could incur the wrath of the assailants who clearly held the upper hand. Ultimately, she concluded that cooperation was the most prudent choice, and with that decision, she opened the door. In an unexpected turn of events, Stella swiftly darted past Catherine and made her way directly to the playroom, where the family usually spent a lot of time together. Acting quickly, Catherine intercepted her daughter's friend, preventing her from following. Kirsten Perkinson, the friend's mother, later recounted her surprise at Catherine's unusual behavior, which deviated from her typical exuberance. In response to Perkinson's inquiry about her well-being, Catherine, normally lively, claimed to be unwell. She gestured with a circular motion to the side of her head, mimicking a gun to indicate someone might be considered crazy, abruptly ending the conversation and shutting the door. This peculiar gesture would later trouble Perkinson, who wondered if Catherine was attempting to convey something. Was Kathy being monitored by the intruders? Could she have attempted an escape, potentially saving herself and Stella? However, the dilemma of leaving Brian and Ruby behind weighed heavily on Catherine's mind. Perkinson departed, planning to return later for the party. With all 4 Harveys now inside the house, Catherine returned to the basement and discovered a terrified Stella, who had been securely tied up alongside the rest of the family. As everyone lay bound and vulnerable, chaos erupted. Suddenly and without warning, the man in charge revealed a knife sourced from the Harveys' own kitchen and began slashing their throats, including those of the young girls. Expressing frustration that they were not succumbing quickly enough, he instructed his accomplice to bludgeon their heads. However, the partner refused, prompting the assailant to grab a claw hammer and ruthlessly strike them repeatedly until they stopped moving. After removing Catherine Harvey's wedding ring, the assailants ignited the room, using wine as an accelerant to conceal evidence of their heinous acts. As they made their escape from the residence, they indulged in a plate of freshly baked cookies that sat cooling on the kitchen counter and stole a laptop, DVD player, and various other items. Rushing out, they entered the getaway vehicle parked outside. Inside the getaway vehicle was a woman who was in a relationship with one of the men, serving as a lookout during what was initially intended as a simple robbery. They swiftly departed, leaving the scene just as inconspicuously as they had arrived. Sometime later, at around 1:30 p.m., Johnny Hott arrived for the celebratory gathering. Upon opening the front door, he was greeted by a thick cloud of smoke pouring out. Alarmed by the pungent odor of burning, he alerted the neighbors, who quickly dialed 911. As emergency responders entered the premises and dealt with the fire, unfortunately they encountered 4 bodies in the smoldering basement, still intact. Investigators at the scene soon deduced that the fire did not result in their demise, but rather a more sinister cause of death was unveiled, and this had now become a murder investigation. Police officers and paramedics, who were accustomed to witnessing the darkest aspects of humanity, were reported to have found the harrowing scene so distressing that some openly shed tears. The revelation that the parents had been compelled to witness the brutal demise of their children, and vice versa, was sad to imagine. Autopsies disclosed that Brian and Catherine met their end due to blunt force trauma to the head. Stella, tragically, succumbed to a combination of blunt force trauma and smoke inhalation, suggesting she was alive when the fire ignited, despite her grievous injuries. Ruby's demise resulted from stab wounds to her neck and back. Despite initiating an immediate investigation into the murders, the authorities had little evidence. Recognizing the potential for criminals to divulge information, they appealed to the public for assistance. Unfortunately, their breakthrough came a few days later. On January 6th, a woman named LaToya Pauly contacted the police, urging them to conduct a welfare check on her friend, 21-year-old Ashley Baskerville Tucker. Pauly expressed her concerns as she believed that Ashley's boyfriend, 29-year-old Ray Joseph Dandridge, and his uncle, 29-year-old Ricky Javen Gray, were involved in the Harvey family's murder. Ricky, who was slightly younger than his nephew by a few months, was said to be the one in charge. The shocking revelation continued as Pauly disclosed that the 2 men had stashed evidence of their crimes at her residence. She revealed that Gray and Dandridge had recently visited her home with a laptop that had an image of the Harveys as its wallpaper. The Harvey case had by then received extensive coverage in the news, leaving no doubt that the laptop belonged to them. Additionally, LaToya provided intricate details about a scheme devised by Ashley, Gray, and Dandridge to rob Ashley's parents. In this plan, Ashley was supposed to act as a hostage, allowing Ricky and Gray to extort money from the Baskerville Tuckers, which would portray Ashley as innocent. Despite being privy to the entire plan and being offered a role, LaToya declined, becoming suspicious of the trio. The uncle and nephew were the only ones that returned hours later, and when asked about Ashley's whereabouts, they cryptically replied, "Ashley has gone bye-bye." This statement heightened LaToya's concerns, prompting her to contact the police. It was this crucial information that investigators needed to start connecting the dots. Having confirmed LaToya's information, investigators proceeded to the residence where Ashley resided with her mother, 46-year-old Mary Baskerville Tucker, and stepfather, 55-year-old Percival Tucker. To their horror, they encountered yet another gruesome scene. Upon entering the home, they discovered the lifeless bodies of all 3 victims, subjected to a brutal method similar to the Harvey family's fate. The victims were bound, gagged, and had their throats mercilessly slit. Duct tape, wound tightly around their heads, inflicted additional suffering on Mary and Percival, who both displayed deep neck lacerations. Percival had a sock forcibly inserted into his throat. Ashley, tragically, was found to have been suffocated with a plastic bag. The common cause of death for all 3 was determined to be suffocation and torture. Suspecting the presence of thrill killers, law enforcement agencies from across the region collaborated in a joint effort to apprehend them before they could perpetrate further atrocities. Similar to the Harveys, Percival and Mary led quiet lives without harboring any enemies. Percival worked as a forklift operator, while Mary was employed by a housekeeping business. Their tranquil existence was shattered by the betrayal from their own daughter, ultimately leading to the tragic demise of an innocent couple who sought to enjoy their golden years. The investigators swiftly uncovered the crucial link between the Harveys and Tuckers. Ashley was found wearing Brian Harvey's wedding band, the same one that was missing and taken from Catherine. With this revelation, urgent action was imperative to apprehend Gray and Dandridge before they could inflict further irreparable harm. Having traced their movements back to their home state of Pennsylvania, Gray and Dandridge were captured in Philadelphia on January 7th. In his questioning, Dandridge asserted that the murders had been conceived by his uncle, and he had merely followed instructions. Faced with these incriminating accusations, Gray readily admitted to the killings of the Harveys and his involvement in those of Ashley and her parents. While these straightforward confessions were enough to leave anyone astounded, it became apparent that this was just the beginning. Gray provided gruesome, intricate details of both family massacres, emphasizing that their actions were driven solely by the need for money. During the Harvey family murders, unbeknownst to everyone, he was under the influence of PCP. PCP, or phenylcyclohexylpiperidine, is a drug known for inducing auditory and visual hallucinations, as well as violent behavior. Throughout his confession, Gray maintained a chilling, emotionless stare. His utter indifference towards the lives he took led investigators to believe they were face to face with the devil incarnate. It was also revealed that Gray was responsible for the murder of his wife, Trevor Terrell Gray, whose body was uncovered in a shallow grave on Brookside Avenue in Washington, Pennsylvania. The couple had been married for 6 months prior to her tragic murder and resided together in a house owned by Trevor's family, along with Gray's nephew, Ray. According to Trevor's parents, the Grays frequently engaged in bitter arguments. Claw marks on Ricky's forearm were even discovered on the day Trevor's body was found. Despite being interviewed by Washington police, neither Gray nor Dandridge were initially considered suspects. Marna Squires, Trevor's mother, alleged that law enforcement assumed Trevor had succumbed to a drug overdose, leading to a lackadaisical investigation into her death. Although Trevor's demise was deemed suspicious at the time, a homicide investigation was only initiated after Gray's confession in 2006. On December 31, 2005, a brutal assault unfolded, where 26-year-old Ryan Carey was attacked by 2 men in front of his parents' Arlington home, who were later identified as Gray and Dandridge. The assault left Carey with severe beating and stab wounds to the chest, neck, and arms, resulting in a near-fatal assault that caused him to spend the following 2 weeks in a coma. Additionally, he permanently lost the use of his right arm. On February 9, 2006, Ricky Gray faced 5 charges of capital murder, while Ray Dandridge was indicted on 3 counts of murder for his involvement in the Baskerville Tucker killings. Despite their earlier admissions, both men pleaded not guilty. After a 6-month trial, the jury found Gray guilty on all counts, leading to a life sentence for the murders of Brian and Catherine Harvey. In response to the brutal taking of Stella and Ruby's lives, the court deemed nothing less than a death sentence appropriate. In September 2006, following his uncle's conviction, and after learning the verdict in his case, Dandridge opted for a plea deal to evade the death penalty. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. In December 2006, Ricky Gray faced charges from Culpeper County for the murder of Cheryl Warner, a 37-year-old legal secretary and mother of 3. Warner was discovered shot and hanged by an electrical cord in the basement of her Burning Riva residence. Gray entered a not guilty plea. However, on June 4, 2008, the charge was suspended due to conflicting evidence. Over the subsequent 9 years, Gray's legal team pursued numerous appeals, primarily arguing that their client suffered from diminished capacity due to an abusive childhood. The case reached the Supreme Court, where it was summarily rejected in 2016. In November 2016, Gray was scheduled to be executed on January 18, 2017. On January 18, 2017, with all of his appeals exhausted, Ricky Gray was executed by lethal injection at Greensville Correctional Center. Ray Dandridge still remains incarcerated at Sussex II State Prison. The brutal murders of the Harvey family unleashed an overwhelming wave of horror and sorrow, with over 1,400 individuals attending their memorial service, expressing their condolences and grief. In front of Kathy's store, flowers and dolls piled up and formed a poignant tribute. Along the curb outside the red brick house, children placed candles which maintained their glow for weeks. A neighbor reflected on the community's collective mourning, stating, "We kept those candles lit for weeks." Kathy's brother, Culp, testified about the profound impact of the murders, describing them as a lightning bolt to the heart that felt bottomless. He further expressed, "It kills me to think about their last hours. We are all trying to get past this. You know, we owe it to them and to their spirit." Within Richmond's Forest Hill Park, an entrance to a footbridge is adorned with a granite monument, a poignant dedication to the Harvey family. This family, who had previously enjoyed many joyful moments at the site, saw their lives abruptly and tragically cut short. A bronze plaque, depicting their radiant smiles, serves as a commemoration of happier days before the unfathomable evil infiltrated their lives, devastating everything in its wake. It is sad and unfortunate what all the victims faced against these monsters. As we reflect on this heart-wrenching tale, our thoughts are with the victims whose lives were tragically cut short and the loved ones they left behind. This is a still image from the footage recorded by Els Van Doren's helmet camera during her skydiving venture, just moments preceding her tragic demise. Despite being a highly skilled and experienced skydiver with numerous successful jumps, this particular instance led to an unfortunate end that nobody expected, with both her main and backup parachutes malfunctioning. Initially deemed an accident, a lingering suspicion persisted, prompting a more thorough investigation that shed light to the dark secrets in Van Doren's life and uncovered a shocking revelation. This was not any other skydiving venture that had gone wrong. This was actually a murder case and was dubbed by the media as the parachute murder. This is the twisted case of Els Van Doren. Els Van Doren was a 38-year-old Belgian woman married to an Antwerp jeweler named Jan de Wilde, and together they had 2 children, Vincent de Wilde and Carol de Wilde. While she worked in the family's jewelry store, Van Doren's true passion lay in skydiving. Initially taking up the sport with her husband in 1994, Van Doren surpassed his interest as her enthusiasm grew. With 2,300 jumps under her belt, she was an experienced skydiver. Every weekend and on bank holidays, she devoted her time to skydiving. In 1998, she delved into formation jumping and, by 2001, became a member of an all-female skydiving team who called themselves the Divas. The team even competed in the World Skydiving Championships in 2003, but unfortunately, Van Doren had to exit the group in 2004 due to health issues stemming from a hernia. After her recovery, Van Doren opted to skydive for enjoyment instead of competing. She became a member of the Swartberg Parachute Club, and by 2006, her tally of successful jumps, as mentioned earlier, had surpassed 2,300. It was within this club that she formed a close friendship with a fellow skydiver, 26-year-old schoolteacher, Els Klottermans. Given their shared first name, Van Doren would later suggest the nickname Babs for her younger friend to minimize any potential confusion within the skydiving club they both attended. A certain gentleman by the name Marcel Summers also belonged to the same club and was acquainted with both women. The trio not only developed a strong friendship, but also became diving partners during their skydiving ventures. With time, Van Doren found herself developing a stronger bond with Marcel, even though she was a married woman. Their initially platonic relationship gradually evolved into a romantic entanglement. Her family was used to her spending weekends away at the skydiving club, and this unknowingly provided a convenient cover, which prevented her husband from growing suspicious about her relationship with Marcel. They often frequented Marcel's apartment, spending their weekends together without any worry. Little did Van Doren realize that she and Babs were not just sharing a first name, but also the same man. Unbeknownst to both women, Marcel had been secretly involved with both of them intimately. To manage both affairs, Marcel devised a schedule, allocating specific days for each woman. Fridays were dedicated to spending time with Babs, while Saturdays were reserved for Van Doren. This arrangement proved advantageous for Marcel for some period, however it would be short-lived when an unexpected twist awaited them, one particular weekend. On the evening of Friday, November 10, 2006, Babs arrived at Marcel's residence as per their regular weekly arrangement. Unbeknownst to her, Els Van Doren had decided to surprise Marcel by showing up unexpectedly that same night. Babs and Marcel had been dining together at the time, and upon returning to Marcel's apartment, they were met with Van Doren, who was waiting outside his door. The subsequent conversation that took place was unknown, but what was known for sure is that night, it was not Babs who shared Marcel's bed. Instead, she found herself relegated to sleeping in a sleeping bag on the living room floor, while Van Doren and Marcel took the next phase to the bedroom. There in the living room, Babs noticed Van Doren's parachute and other skydiving gear in close proximity. Feeling wounded and betrayed after being deceived and replaced by her friend, Babs succumbed to an unthinkable action, one that would culminate in a tragic outcome later on. On November 18, 2006, 12 members of the skydiving club, including Van Doren, Babs, and Marcel, embarked on a flight over Flanders. The plan involved Van Doren, Babs, Marcel, and another skydiver named Tom executing a 4-person formation jump at 13,000 feet. In this formation, they would interlock hands before releasing and deploying their parachutes. As they readied for the jump, Els, Marcel, and Tom leaped from the plane as intended. However, it seemed that Babs, perhaps due to a delay or intentionally, jumped slightly later than the others. During the free fall, Babs was not able to catch up with the group, and therefore, at 9,000 feet, Marcel, Van Doren, and Tom broke the formation, preparing to safely open their parachutes. At this juncture, it became evident that a serious issue had arisen. As Van Doren attempted to engage her parachute by pulling the cords, it refused to open. Striving to remain composed, she recollected the emergency procedures during her training, and having encountered a failed parachute once before, she had successfully deployed the reserve parachute on that occasion. However, in this instance, hurtling through freefall at approximately 200 kilometers per hour, she had a mere 20 seconds or less to execute a life-saving maneuver for a successful landing. Despite her efforts, pulling the reserve cord proved futile, and the parachute remained unresponsive. With her desperation escalating, she persisted in tugging at both the main parachute and reserve cords, yet no response ensued. Marcel, who was 800 meters above, observed Van Doren, who was a mere 500 meters from the ground, and sensed that something was wrong as her parachute had still not been deployed, but he could do nothing but just witness the unfolding horror. In a final, desperate attempt, Van Doren tried to untangle the cords of her parachute, hoping to activate it, but her fate had already been sealed. Meanwhile, on the ground, in the town of Opglabeek, as these events occurred, a woman was outside hanging laundry in her garden. A resounding thud made her grow alarmed at what had happened. Glancing upward, she witnessed an individual descending from the sky with a parachute towards her garden. This spectacle wasn't unfamiliar, given that her residence was merely a few kilometers from the skydiving club and its landing field. While turning to resume her laundry task, the woman spotted a white fabric entangled on top of her shrubs. Drawing closer, she saw a person lying amidst the bushes. Swiftly, she called her husband, who was also in the garden attending to maintenance duties, and they promptly contacted emergency services. That person was Els Van Doren, who they assumed was one of the skydivers, but unfortunately did not display any signs of life. On the other hand, Marcel secured a safe landing spot and sprinted through the streets, frantically calling out for Van Doren and trying to pinpoint her location. Spotting an ambulance, Marcel gave chase, following it to the nearby site where Van Doren had descended. As he rushed towards her, he had to be restrained, allowing the emergency crew to approach. Upon the arrival of emergency services, resuscitation efforts were initiated, but proved futile. Els Van Doren had succumbed. Marcel vehemently insisted on preserving Van Doren's parachute untouched, asserting the abnormality of both the main and reserve parachutes failing to open. He then contacted her husband Jan and delivered the devastating news. Jan hurried to his wife's side, while Tom and Babs returned to the parachute club to relay the tragic news of Van Doren's demise to the other members. As the gravity of the news sank in for the club's members, Babs, overwhelmed, sank to her knees, releasing a mournful wail. Elle's husband, Jan, arrived at the club to gather her belongings, encountering Babs, who volunteered to retrieve the items. He observed her seemingly motionless and noted a peculiar grin on her face at that moment. Babs proceeded towards the changing rooms, with Jan trailing closely. However, upon arrival, Babs abruptly shut the door, locking Jan out. He recounted that Babs took a considerable amount of time before eventually emerging with Van Doren's belongings. Meanwhile, at the accident site, the police had gathered Van Doren's parachute and helmet, the latter equipped with a video camera capturing her ill-fated jump. An autopsy, conducted to ascertain her state, revealed no traces of alcohol or drugs that might have impaired her functionality. Her demise was classified as either a homicide or a suicide, attributed to numerous fractures and internal bleeding resulting from the impact of the fall. Suspicions arose within Van Doren's family, pointing toward the possibility of her being murdered by someone within her skydiving club, an individual well-versed on how the parachute works. Consequently, The club members were discouraged from attending her funeral, a plea that some members, including Els Klottermans, disregarded. The family's anguish intensified when the police disclosed that Van Doren had been engaged in a prolonged extramarital affair with Marcel Summers, spanning over 5 years. Jan, in particular, felt deeply wounded, discovering that fellow club members were aware of the affair, some of whom he considered friends from his own club membership. To compound matters, Van Doren had falsely informed her club peers that she was separated from her husband. Her funeral took place a mere day before her daughter Carol's 15th birthday. During this solemn occasion, Carol addressed her mother through a heartfelt statement, recounting the family's repeated pleas for her to cease skydiving. She conveyed the family's longing for her presence. She, however, concluded her remarks by acknowledging her mother's individuality and emphasizing that she would have been unhappy if she had to abandon what she loved to do. In response to the escalating concerns surrounding the failure of Van Doren's reserve parachute, the police initiated an investigation shortly after the funeral. A parachuting specialist, well-versed in parachute mechanics, was enlisted to scrutinize Van Doren's parachute, seeking to identify any irregularities. Swiftly, the expert discerned a critical absence, a vital component of her parachute, the pilot chute. This small auxiliary parachute usually plays a pivotal role in deploying either the main or reserve parachute. Its intentional removal was evident, signaling deliberate interference. Additionally, clear indications of tampering surfaced, notably the severed drawstring to the pilot chute, responsible for activating the main parachute, and one of the hanging straps connected to the emergency parachute. Upon reviewing the last bodycam footage from Van Doren's ill-fated jump, an unidentified red fabric appeared suspended in front of her face. Not recognized as part of Van Doren's skydiving gear, investigators struggled to find out the origin of this object. They requested and urged the residents of Opglabeek to do thorough checks of their gardens and nearby surroundings in a bid to uncover the red item, and if found, it was emphasized that the discovery be handled cautiously as potential evidence, as it possibly contained DNA from the individual who had sabotaged Van Doren's parachute, but unfortunately, no one succeeded in locating this crucial piece. On the Monday following Els Van Doren's tragic demise, a miraculous discovery came to light as the pilot chute was mysteriously found by Babs. She claimed that on returning from Marcel's apartment, she spotted the chute hanging from a tree during her journey between Opglabeek and Genk. Rather than contacting the police directly, Babs opted to inform Marcel of her find. Upon learning of the discovery, Marcel made the call to the police, who promptly proceeded to the tree site. Upon their arrival, the police encountered a nervous, troubled, and visibly emotional Babs. However, their suspicions were aroused regarding Klotterman's miraculous discovery of the pilot chute. She asserted that it was purely coincidental, attributing it to her decision to take a different route home that day compared to her usual journey. According to her account, being stuck behind a slow-moving tractor led her to glance upward, where she spotted the chute dangling around 20 meters above, interpreting it as a heavenly sign from Van Doren. Police, however, remained skeptical, as the fact that the pilot chute was missing was known only to the investigators at that point. At this point, the primary suspects implicated in the presumed murder of Van Doren included her husband, Jan, her lover, Marcel, and her friend, Els Klottermans. Police conducted searches at Marcel's residence and would later clear him as a suspect. Jan, Van Doren's husband, was also later cleared as a suspect by the authorities. Investigative efforts extended to Els Klotterman's home, where items such as her phone, laptop, and a diary documenting her emotions, as per her psychiatrist's recommendation, were confiscated by the police. Babs was subsequently summoned for questioning at the police station, aiming to obtain further information about her relationships with Marcel, Van Doren, and the events surrounding Van Doren's demise. Throughout the interrogation, Klottermans vehemently denied any involvement in sabotaging Van Doren's parachute. Instead, she attempted to shift blame onto either Marcel, suggesting he kept Van Doren's gear during her weekend stays, or her husband Jan, with whom she purportedly stored her gear during the week. Following the initial questioning, Klottermans was released and allowed to return home. However, a second interview scheduled for December 20th, 2006, saw her absence. Subsequent investigations revealed that she had attempted taking her own life earlier that morning, having taken an overdose combination of sleeping pills and antidepressants. Discovered unresponsive by her mother, Babs was swiftly taken to hospital for urgent treatment. In letters addressed to her loved ones before the act, she conveyed the difficulty of coping with the loss of her close friend and expressed the overwhelming stress of being implicated as a murder suspect in the case. After recuperating, Babs was admitted to a psychiatric facility where she was carefully monitored for a duration of 15 days. Having been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and depression years earlier, this marked not her first attempt at self-harm. Marcel had chose to sever ties with her, contending that he perceived her actions as an attention-seeking ploy, asserting that she had no genuine intent to end her life. Marcel speculated that she strategically took the pills shortly before anticipating her mother's return, suggesting her primary motive was to divert attention from her alleged involvement in Van Doren's death. He presumed that the police were closing in on her, ensnaring her in her own lies. Shortly thereafter, still receiving psychiatric care, Els Klottermans found herself under arrest on January 11, 2007, suspected of the murder of Els Van Doren. Her appearance in court on January 19, 2007, resulted in the decision to keep her in custody while the ongoing investigation unfolded. Despite being asked to undergo a polygraph test, Klottermans declined, and this measure was never carried out. A more detailed investigation of Els Van Doren's skydiving equipment revealed that the parachute cords had been deliberately cut using a pair of scissors, and the individual responsible for this act was likely a right-handed person. As of March 2007, Babs had spent 3 months in prison, enduring extensive interrogation without admitting guilt. During the questioning, she did concede to being the sender of an anonymous letter addressed to Van Doren, asserting that her actions towards her family were wrong. Jan had discovered this letter, but interpreted it as a critique of Van Doren's frequent absence from her family due to skydiving. He discarded the letter without attaching much significance to it. However, it became evident that Babs intended this as a warning for Van Doren to bring an end to her involvement with Marcel. Additionally, she admitted to making anonymous calls to Marcel, intentionally timed when she knew he was with Van Doren, and tried to intimidate them. Upon scrutinizing Babs's automatic activation device, or an AAD, investigators noted that she jumped later than the rest of the team and activated her parachute earlier, speculating that it gave her a vantage position to witness the unfolding events from above. This strategic move also allowed her to monitor the location where Van Doren's black pilot chute had landed, potentially for retrieval afterwards. In September 2008, Klotterman's lawyer successfully secured her release on bail, and despite the ongoing investigation, she resumed to work in a school. The murder trial commenced on September 24, 2010, with the prosecution expressing confidence in the adequacy of the evidence to secure a murder charge against Klottermans. The motive presented was rooted in jealousy upon discovering that her lover was engaged in a relationship with her close friend. In a previous statement to investigators, Klottermans had admitted to being aware that she held a subordinate position to Van Doren in the eyes of Marcel Summers, acknowledging that she was the second best since Summers clearly preferred Van Doren over her. Consequently, driven by a desperate desire to eliminate her romantic rival and remove Van Doren from the equation, the prosecution asserted a compelling motive for the alleged murder. Klotterman's defense attorney contended that the prosecution relied solely on circumstantial evidence and alleged accusations to support their case. During her testimony, Klottermans asserted that she did not envision a future with Marcel and engaged intimately with him solely due to her low self-esteem. At one point, she even attempted to shift blame towards Carol, Van Doren's daughter, suggesting that she might have sought to retaliate against her mother for being away most of the weekends. However, despite her earnest efforts to manipulate the jury and divert blame, their judgment prevailed. On October 20, 2010, Els Klottermans was found guilty of murdering her friend Els Van Doren and received a 30-year prison sentence. During the trial, Babs, steadfast in her assertion of innocence, was placed under close observation to prevent her from self-harming again. Later on, she lodged an appeal, contending that police had questioned her in the absence of her attorney. In May 2011, her appeal was rejected. However, in June 2022, following a third appeal, and after serving only 12.5 years, Els Klottermans was granted conditional release from prison and is now a free woman. It is unfortunate what happened to Els van Doren, and also sad what her family had to go through after everything came to light. Our deepest sympathies go out to the life that was lost and the grieving loved ones she left behind.